Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a lot to cover today. First off, I finally reached 1,000 subscribers, so thank you very much for that. I have a particular video that I want to upload in light of this, but I won't release that until next Friday. Between today and Monday, I'm going to finish off this phase of the tuning exams first. We've had some pretty fun matchups so far, some with drama and some that were simple. Naruto had yet another run-in with the fox. Minato left for some reason. Neji was stabbed by Tamari. Sakura pulled the wool over Shikamaru's eyes. Lots of action, and just the way the dice has fallen, we're left with a bunch of the foreign ninja. Let's just jump right into the action. Kiba Inuzuka versus Tenten. As soon as their names appear, Kiba makes a snide, dismissive comment about being picked against an easy opponent. Might Guy, meanwhile, warns Kiba not to risk underestimating his opponents no matter how confident he is. Even if Might Guy himself were to fight Tenten, he'd still be careful because it's hard to tell who's got an ace up their sleeve. Not only that, but Kiba hasn't really seen Tenten fight outside of Academy. None of their missions have run tandem with each other. And Tenten wasn't among the Genin to fight the Elite Team 7. Kiba gives Might Guy the expected yeah before entering the arena. Meanwhile, Asuma shakes Tenten's shoulder, reminding her that her name was drawn. She shrugs and makes a quiet statement that they might as well get it over with. Asuma stops her from leaving and tells her to try her very best, and not assume Kiba's better than her. Though she attempts to evade his eye contact, Asuma goes on and insists that she's a much better fighter than she thinks she is. Not just that, but Akamaru may be a puppy, but he's also trained specifically for combat. He's both an intelligent, self-performing tool for Kiba, but also Kiba's greatest weak point, should she need to exploit. Nodding uncertainly, Tenten makes her way down the stairs. As she and Kiba assume their positions, Tenten glances up towards her team. Naruto is understandably dejected and mopey given the fox's intrusion, but she didn't think he'd remain so distant. Hinata, on the other hand, gives her a silent, smiling nod of encouragement. Anko waves her hand as the green light to the fight, and Kiba wastes no time charging in with Akamaru. Brandishing two kunai, Tenten tries to match his ferocious offensive. They clash kunai on one hand, while Kiba catches her other hand with his other. They can only struggle for seconds before Akamaru clamps down on her forearm and weakens the grip on her kunai. Releasing the weapon, Tenten twists in just such a way that she's able to pull the still clamping Akamaru into her other kunai. As the puppy releases grip to evade the blade, Kiba reaches a stab at Tenten. Charging her weapon hand with directionless lightning, she forces Kiba to temporarily retreat. Though this rattles Kiba, his release is earth, and he can't reliably overpower her element. If he wanted to exhaust himself, it would be doable, but the cost was so high. Picking up her dropped kunai, Tenten thrusts a kick in Kiba's direction, who leaps backward several steps to dodge. Pulling out a length of wire, she throws her kunai like a curveball behind Kiba, hoping to tie him up. Akamaru, however, chases the kunai and catches it out of the air as Kiba begins his second assault. Tugging hard on the wire, Tenten causes Akamaru to fly, but does not halt his offensive. Irked and surprised at how well Kiba stays in close proximity, Tenten wonders how she'll manage to outmaneuver him. She hardly has time to think, as she struggles to keep up with his onslaught combined with Akamaru's. The puppy isn't causing any real harm, but running interception on several of her attacks have already proven him an annoyance. Meanwhile, Kiba is shocked that Tenten's able to keep up in taijutsu with him, even while Akamaru is trying everything to distract her. Every time he throws a punch or hurls some shuriken, Tenten already seems to be countering it. But at the end of the day, Kiba knows he'll win a fight of attrition. If he can't win a battle of physical domination, all he needs to do is wait for her to get tired. There are few of the Leaf Genin that can outlast him after all. Kiba is less technical than Tenten with weaponry, but he's far more savage with his strikes, seemingly sacrificing defense to push her as much as possible. Tenten, meanwhile, is searching for a hole in his offense so she might push back even a little bit. She knows herself that hers is a battle against time. She has no discernible chakra to wield on a good day, never mind in the midst of a battle. She needs to lean on her weapons and physical output as much as possible. Akamaru is also striking in perfect flow with Kiba. The two don't seemingly communicate, but their attacks have a clever cooperation between them. Discouraged slightly by her foe, Tenten sees in her mind's eye a vision of Tsunade insulting her. She'll never amount to anything after all, so why is she trying so hard if it'll end in failure? Shaking her head as sparks fly in their fierce fight, Tenten reminds herself that it was an illusion, feeding directly on her own fears. She thinks of Naruto while she clashes with Kiba, remembering that despite being hated by the village, Naruto is still here, still trying to get better. He might keep to himself, but through it all, she thinks that he has high aspirations. If anyone has a life of failure ahead of them, wouldn't he be the most likely for it? But he's still trying. He's still pushing. Every time he's knocked down, he just seems to get right back up. There's no reason why she can't do the same. Tenten notices within Kiba's seemingly perfect flow of attacks that there's some predictability. Nearly every time Kiba tries to grapple with her, Akamaru too tries to pin one of her limbs. Simultaneously, whenever Kiba goes for an in-and-out assault, Akamaru too launches a quick bite and a quick retreat. As she tries to strike with weapons, Kiba seems to inevitably grapple. But if she goes for pure taijutsu, he drops grappling and matches her taijutsu. She is also trying to keep hold of her kunai without letting them drop across the arena. So far, she's kept up predictability herself as well, always wielding two kunai together. On this go, however, she pulls out a smoke bomb in her left hand, and as soon as Kiba tries reaching for her wrist, she drops the bomb. As she hopes, he withdraws to evade the smoke, likely due to his sensitive nose. He taunts her in this moment, remarking that he can still smell exactly where she is within the smoke. Pulling out a scroll, Tenten conjures a rain of her own weapons from within cover. As her shuriken and kunai fly out and at Kiba, he shuts up and dances around in a desperate attempt to avoid injury. While he's distracted by the flying weapons, Tenten pulls out another scroll and conjures a foldable wind demon shuriken. Flying out from the dispersing smoke with a fully brandished shuriken, Tenten swings it as hard as she can, and Kiba blocks it with a kunai. The way Tenten's wielding the shuriken allows its blades to collapse back in on themselves off her own momentum. This creates several more kicks of force as the other three blades snap into position against Kiba's kunai, saving Tenten additional energy on keeping Kiba busy. Unable to hold up against the momentum of the blade, Kiba relinquishes the struggle to Tenten as he drops his kunai and dodges away from the blade. Asuma grins widely at Tenten's clever use of the shuriken and wonders how she came up with the tactic. Meanwhile, Naruto's forgotten his sadness in the hype of Tenten turning the tide in her favor. Across the balconies, most everyone is paying attention now. Omoi has gotten up and together with his teammates, watches on with interest at Tenten's ability to stay in the match. Only Gaara is uninterested, but that dude's not exactly a master of close-range tactics. Fully brandishing the shuriken once more, unfolding it completely, Tenten also creates more distance. She's grateful for the moment of reprieve as Kiba stares at her weapon. He's completely shaken that she'd have such a large weapon at her disposal. Tenten does not want to betray weakness in front of Kiba, but she can't keep matching his pace. Cutting his thumb, Kiba thrusts a hand to the floor and summons two more ninja dogs. Might Guy shakes his head slightly, disappointed that Kiba's allowed himself to get flustered. Ninja dogs are primarily for scouting, not combat, and Kiba knows that. They can do some damage, but that's certainly not their specialty. All he's risking in this summoning is getting the ninja dogs injured. As she sees Kiba whispering to the dogs, Tenten glances up at her team and sees Naruto wide-eyed, gripping the balcony with enough force to turn his knuckles white. Hinata is the world's quietest cheerleader, and Asuma-sensei is now leaning forward, nodding at her. Smile creeping across her face, pride swelling, Tenten pulls out her third and final scroll. Though the dogs begin to mobilize with Kiba's instruction, Tenten's already summoning her last item. Out of her last scroll, she summons Kiba. What? No, her swords are also called Kiba. Boy, this is awkward. Okay, henceforth, Kiba will be referred to as Dog Boy, and Kiba will continue to be called Kiba. Dog Boy's alarmed at the sight of Kiba, wondering how Tenten got her hands on such an exotic weapon. Handling Kiba with both hands, Tenten shifts her grip uncertainly as if she's never handled Kiba before or beheld the majesty. I can't do this. At some point this will turn into weird sexual innuendo, if it hasn't already. Okay, Dog Boy will go back to being Kiba, and Kiba will just be her swords. With just the slightest exertion of chakra, the swords snap to life with lightning coursing through them. The Cloud Ninja's interest has turned to concern as they begin whispering amongst themselves upon witnessing her newly obtained swords. The summoned dog's hair stands on end at the prospect of being zapped by those blades, but they nevertheless follow Kiba's lead, who doesn't back down at the sight. Meeting again, Kiba finds that he can't even touch her hands anymore, as the residual electricity from within the blades seems to be protecting her, arcing towards any foreign body. Growling at these unfair weapons, Kiba tells Tenten that a little bit of pain won't stop him from attacking her. Pulling out another kunai, Kiba charges in, even as Rock Lee and Ino both shout for him to stop. In his anger, he has forgotten what a lightning-charged blade does to a non-lightning-charged blade. Swinging her swords to meet him, hers slice through the kunai like a hot knife through butter, and Kiba receives a jolting cut to the front of his shoulder. As he yelps in pain, the ninja dogs and Akamaru dive at her rear flank to distract her. Twirling in place with the other sword, it just takes one swipe to dissuade the dogs. Asuma's smile fades as he watches Tenten fight. Ordinarily, one could consider her performance exemplary. However, famous swords like hers often have drawbacks to them, and Asuma has spotted this drawback. Tenten's remaining time has sped up. With the dogs kept at bay with one blade, Tenten keeps Kiba on his heels with the other. But she's sweating now, and she feels very tired. Landing another strike against a rattled Kiba, she finally knocks him off his feet. Keeping one sword trained on his dogs, Tenten puts the other to his throat and asks him how far she needs to go to get him to give up. Kiba of course tells her he'll never give up, even against such a stupid sword, but the call isn't his to make. Anko calls the fight off, remarking that if this were the real world, Tenten wouldn't have paused to talk just now. It just takes a moment of weakness, and even the stronger opponent will lose. Accidentally releasing her blades, Tenten falls to her knees, exhausted. The blades continue to snap with electricity for several seconds before losing their charge. Asuma lands beside her and picks up the swords. He tells her that they're very dangerous for her to wield. Tenten confirms that Lord Jiraiya explained their drawback to her already, but she just didn't expect them to take such a toll in such a short period of time. Kiba tries complaining that he only lost the match because she has a weapon she can't even handle, but the reverse Uno card is pulled on him. Anko wonders who in the room can summon yet. Well, he can. Meanwhile, Tenten is discouraged even in her victory. She's glad to be moving on, but disheartened that she can't reliably use the Kiba swords in a serious fight. As she rejoins her team atop the balcony, they are joined by Omoi, of all people? He gives sidelong glances at Hinata, who averts her gaze, and at Naruto, who squints back at him. He mutters at Tenten, flubbing over his words before clearly asking where she got the swords. She asks him if he recognizes her, ignoring his question, but he shrugs uncertainly. Rolling her eyes, she tells him to come back when he remembers. Awkwardly standing there for several more seconds, Omoi eventually sidles toward the stairs and returns to his group. Tenten watches him walk across the floor below and smiles, happy that she's even impressed the Cloud Ninja. She sighs and suddenly feels lightheaded, steadied only by a hand from Asuma. He asks her if she'd like to get some medical aid, but she insists that she can at least watch until the end. The screen snaps through 8 remaining names for several seconds before landing on Rock Lee versus Hinata Hyuga. Though she's more or less recovered physically, Hinata's already small confidence is also shot. She knows she won't perform to the standard that Tenten just did, and of course doesn't want to perform to Naruto's standard. She feels a little powerless that Naruto didn't seek comfort from her and kept his distance after his fight. He looked so incredibly disappointed when he looked up at her after his fight. But she's never seen the fox take control of him. She doesn't know the first thing she could say to him. And never mind that, due to her blunder in the forest, her entire team was nearly taken out. Even though at no point no one blamed her for the screw-up, she knows it's her fault. It's only fair that she took the Sound Team's attacks and not Naruto or Tenten. And now she's up against a taijutsu specialist. She's the heir of the Hyuga house, a house known for their special taijutsu. She cannot bring shame to them too by losing to Rock Lee. Activating her Byakugan, Hinata assumes the gentle fist stance. Rock Lee, on the other hand, is so fired up that, unlike all the other contestants until now, he leaps from the balcony to his spot in the arena below. When the fight starts, Rock Lee dives hard. With some experience from fighting Neji, Lee smartly evades every strike Hinata tries to make. If she can't hit her target, then she can do no damage. Rock Lee doesn't just have the technical aspect down, he's also extremely fast. Hinata's frankly shocked as she twirls to hit him and he seemingly vanishes before her eyes. Even with her Byakugan, she has difficulty keeping up with his position. Perturbed, Hinata attempts to throw kunai into the mix, but Rock Lee catches her hand at the wrist and forces her to drop it. A quick technique and inspiration he drew from Kiba's match with Tenten minutes ago. It's evident that up to this point he's been taking it easy on her. If he was that fast to begin with, how would he not have hit her yet? Shocked that he's as good as he is, Hinata crumbles and tries to give up. But she's too quiet, and Rock Lee thumps her hard over the top of the head, knocking her out. He bows to her in quiet respect. She unfortunately drew one of the shortest straws in this mini-tournament. Rock Lee was firing on all cylinders, and Hinata's fire had been snuffed out already. The match starts and finishes in seconds, and is enough for Omoi to return to relaxing against the wall and missing the fights. Appearing by Hinata's side, Asuma kneels and picks her up, thanking Rock Lee for not being excessive. Simultaneously, Asuma wonders to himself how he can build her confidence. He's already heard the story of their fight in the forest, and knew that would shake her ability to perform here. In fact, he was quite confident she would lose. Rock Lee is far too specialized to be outdone in taijutsu. Even if Hinata turned to ninjutsu or genjutsu, Asuma thinks it still wouldn't have been enough. Sometimes the matchups are just too challenging to even consider a win. Lord Jiraiya stands atop a very large and very old tree. Surrounding him are 12 of the total 30 Anbu, as he holds a special meeting with them regarding the upcoming Phase 3 of the Chunin exams. As he's about to lead into his next point, Minato is suddenly standing behind him. With a quick nod of his head, Minato dismisses the Anbu, who all vanish from atop the tree. Jiraiya turns to him and asks what's so important that they need to cancel meetings. Not just that, isn't Minato supposed to be at the Forest of Death right now? Sternly, Minato asks Jiraiya why Naruto's seal has already loosened, even though they've just reinforced it. Jiraiya scoffs and tries to play the question off as some joke, not to mock, but due to the absurdity of the context. Unamused, Minato puts a finger to Jiraiya's chest that stops him in his place. Glancing at Minato's finger, Jiraiya quietly asks him what happened. Minato tells him of Naruto's fight, and how the fox took control of his body before his very eyes. He had to step in and stop it. Pushing with his finger, Minato forces Jiraiya back a step and demands to know why it is happening. Jiraiya, a Sannin, designed the seal. How could it crack so easily? Jiraiya puts his hands up in submission and tells Minato that tailed beasts are like meteors. The idea of trapping one inside a human is ludicrous. Minato reminds Jiraiya that Kushina had no problems keeping the Nine Tails contained, so why does his son keep falling victim to it? Jiraiya tells Minato that Kushina grew up during a raging war. The things that scare Naruto today would not have scared him had he grown up in the same era. She was a product of her time, and was likely able to handle the fox better than Naruto. Or perhaps over time, and having repeated imprisonment in multiple hosts, has just made the fox angry. Clenching his teeth, Minato complains that the peaceful life he thought his son would get isn't so at all. Turning to Jiraiya, he asks him for a favor over the next few days. Back in the tower, Anko is letting the screen fly through names once more. Karui asks Omoi if they'll end up pitted against each other at this rate. Omoi tells her that he'd win if that happened, sparking rage from Karui. However, before she can literally beat him to a pulp, the names on the screen slam to a halt. Sasuke Uchiha versus Kankuro of the Wind. And that's the end of today's episode. Asuma is about to have his hands full with figuring out a confidence builder for Hinata. Jiraiya is about to go out of his way for some secretive favor. Also, I really dislike when artifacts exist in fantasy that are just obscenely powerful. So all the swords of the mist have drawbacks. For example, the Kiba swords make channeling chakra into them extremely easy, and you don't even have to shape the chakra. The Kiba swords will transform any kind of chakra into lightning for you, so there's effort saved as well. However, they also just keep sapping chakra from the user until contact is lost. So for those with a lot of chakra, it wouldn't be a very big deal, but those with very little, like Tenten, will struggle. Additionally, Omoi met Tenten during her first mission. She clearly recognized him. In fact, most of the Leaf Genin were not present when the cloud involved themselves there. Only Tenten and Naruto wouldn't remember a face from that long ago. Lastly, for the fights like Tenten versus Kiba, when they're locked in a melee and I'm describing other things in the meantime, I just want to clarify that they're not stopping fighting for that narration to take place. The intention is that they're fighting all the while, but because they're in an effective stalemate, not much action is missed out on to describe other things. There's this very fun bit in Dragon Ball when Krillin fights Jackie Chun, and they're attacking each other so fast that no one in the audience has any idea what's going on. So the announcer actually goes onto the stage and asks for an explanation. And the ensuing explanation is hilarious, of course. But anime does this all the time, where fights that we perceive to be moving in normal time are mere minutes or even seconds long. So I'm sort of playing with that, especially when there's not a lot of changing action in a sequence. But that about does it. Get excited for next week to see how an exhausted Sasuke fares against Kankuro. And of course, the sky's the limit.